My alarm clock rang at exactly 7 o'clock. Today was a very important day for my studies. I had a difficult exam at the city university. I dressed quickly and put on my denim outfit. My backpack was heavy with books and my laptop. I walked to the bus stop on Green Street. The sky was clear and the sun was rising. I looked at the digital sign for the schedule. Bus number 42 arrived every 15 minutes. I was a few minutes early for my ride. A tall man in a gray shirt approached. He was the driver of the big red bus. I saw his name on a small card, Mark. The bus made a loud sound as it stopped. I checked my watch to see the current time. I felt a little bit of stress in my heart. The doors opened with a quiet hiss of air. I stepped onto the first step of the bus. Mark looked at me and said, "Good morning." I replied with a polite and friendly smile. The air inside the bus was cool and fresh. I looked for my plastic transport card in my bag. It was at the bottom of the front pocket. Mark waited for me with a lot of patience. He was a very calm and professional driver. I moved closer to the small electronic reader. The bus was very clean and smelled like citrus. I noticed some people sitting in the back seats. My exam was starting in 45 minutes. I hoped that the traffic was not too heavy. Mark closed the front doors of the vehicle. He checked the mirrors on the left side. I felt the engine start to move the bus. The journey to the university was starting. I looked at the trees passing by the window. I held my textbook tightly in my hands. Learning on the bus was my usual morning plan. Mark drove the bus very smoothly and safely. I felt much better after entering the bus. My red bus journey began with a smile. I held my blue card near the orange reader. The machine made a happy and loud beep. A small screen showed my balance on the card. I had enough money for 10 more trips. Mark nodded and told me to be careful. "The road is a bit bumpy today," he said. I thanked him for the useful warning. I moved past the driver's seat into the aisle. There were many empty seats in the middle. I chose a seat next to a large window. The seat was covered in a soft blue fabric. I put my heavy backpack on the floor. I sat down and looked at the city streets. Mark turned the large steering wheel to the left. We passed a bakery and a small flower shop. I saw many people walking to their offices. Taking the bus was better than walking today. I opened my book to page 24. I needed to remember some dates for history. Mark stopped at the next stop, Rose Square. A woman with a small dog entered the bus. The dog was very quiet and sat on the floor. I liked seeing animals on public transport. Mark greeted every passenger with the same energy. He was a very positive person for a driver. The bus was getting a little bit more crowded. I focused on my book and the important words. The light from the window was perfect for reading. I felt the vibration of the road under my feet. The city felt alive and very busy this morning. We crossed a bridge over the wide river. The water was sparkling in the morning light. I took a deep breath and relaxed my shoulders. Mark checked his internal mirror to see us. He looked like he enjoyed his morning work. I wrote a small note in my notebook. The history of the city was very interesting. My destination was only 5 stops away. The red bus was my favorite way to travel. I was ready for the next part of the trip. We drove past the Central Library building. It was a very old and beautiful stone house. Mark stopped the bus at the library stop. Many students with books got off the bus. I stayed in my seat and continued to study. The bus was quieter after the students left. I looked at a tall statue in the park. The park had many green benches and fountains. Mark was very precise with his braking. I never felt a sudden or fast movement. A man in a suit sat across from me. He was reading a newspaper with a serious face. I looked at the headlines on his paper. The news was about the local weather forecast. Rain was expected for the evening hours. I was glad that I had my umbrella in my bag. Mark drove through a narrow and old street. The bus felt very big for such a small road. But Mark was an expert and did not hit anything. I saw a small cafe with many outdoor tables. People were drinking coffee and eating croissants. I felt a little bit hungry in that moment. I decided to eat after my big exam was over. My phone vibrated with a message from my mother. "Good luck with your history exam, Lily," she wrote. I sent her a quick, thank you, emoji back. The support from my family made me feel strong. Mark announced the next stop over the speaker. "Next stop is the Central Museum," he said clearly. I looked at the museum's big columns. The bus was moving closer to the university. I closed my book to give my brain a rest. Looking at the city was a good distraction. I saw a group of children going to school. They were wearing yellow vests for safety. The bus felt like a safe and warm bubble. Mark stopped at a red traffic light. He looked at the sky and checked his watch. We were perfectly on time for the schedule. I was happy with my choice of transport. Suddenly, the bus stopped in the middle of the road. I saw many cars with red lights in front. There was a big traffic jam near the bridge. I felt a wave of worry in my stomach. If I am late, I cannot enter the exam room. Mark looked out of his window at the traffic. He picked up his small microphone and spoke. "Attention passengers, there is a small delay," he said. "A truck is blocked on the main intersection." Some people on the bus started to complain. The man with the newspaper looked at his watch. I opened my phone to check the map. The road was colored dark red on the screen. Mark stayed very calm and did not look angry. He turned on some soft music in the bus. The music was jazz and it was very relaxing. I closed my eyes for a minute and breathed. 10 minutes passed, and we did not move. I saw a cat sitting on a brick wall nearby. The cat looked at the bus with golden eyes. I started to study my notes again to save time. Mark looked at the cars on the other side. He saw a small opening in the traffic line. He moved the bus slowly to the right lane. We were taking a different, smaller route. "I will try to avoid the main jam," Mark said. I felt a sense of relief and hope again. We drove through a street with many gardens. The houses there were very colorful and neat. Mark was trying his best to help us. I realized that a driver's job is very stressful. He has to find solutions for every problem. The bus was moving faster on this new road. I checked the time and I had 15 minutes. The university was only 2 kilometers away. I whispered a small, "Thank you," to Mark. He was a hero in a gray driver's shirt. The passengers were quiet and waited patiently. The red bus was navigating the city like a ship. We were almost out of the difficult area. At a small stop, an old man tried to enter. He had 2 very heavy bags from the market. Mark stopped the bus and pulled the handbrake. He got out of his seat and walked to the door. I watched as Mark lifted the heavy bags. He put them safely near a priority seat. He then helped the old man sit down comfortably. "Thank you so much, young man," the passenger said. Mark smiled and returned to his driver's seat. This act of kindness made me feel very happy. The world needs more people like Mark. I forgot about my exam stress for a moment. We were back on the main road to the university. The traffic was much better in this district. I saw the tall tower of the science building. My stop was the very next one on the list. I stood up and put my backpack on my shoulders. I held the yellow pole to keep my balance. Mark drove around a big circle with flowers. I pushed the red "Stop" button on the pole. A small bell rang near the driver's head. Mark looked in his mirror and nodded to me. "University Station is next," he announced. I checked my bag to be sure I had my pens. My student ID card was in my pocket. The bus slowed down near a glass shelter. I saw many other students walking to the gates. The morning was warm and full of life. Mark parked the bus perfectly near the curb. He looked at me through the mirror and winked. "Good luck with your exam, student," he said. I was surprised that he remembered my goal. I smiled and said, "Thank you, Mark. Have a nice day." The doors opened and I stepped onto the pavement. The air outside was fresh and smelled like rain. I felt ready and very confident for the test. I watched the red bus drive away into the city. Mark was a great part of my morning story. I walked toward the entrance of the university. Everything was going to be just fine today. I entered the large hall of the university. The floor was made of white and cold marble. I found room number 305. Many students were sitting at their small desks. I sat down and put my pens on the table. The professor walked in with a stack of papers. "You have 2 hours for the exam," he said. I took a deep breath and opened the paper. The first question was about the Central Library. I laughed because I just saw it from the bus. I wrote my answers very fast and very clearly. The journey on the bus helped me to think. I remembered the dates and the famous names. My mind was sharp and full of correct facts. I looked at the clock on the high wall. I finished all the questions in 1 hour. I checked my work twice for any small errors. I felt proud of my hard work and study. I gave my paper to the professor and left. The hall was quiet as I walked out. I felt a giant weight leave my shoulders. I walked out of the building into the garden. The sun was behind a large gray cloud. I remembered the news from the man's paper. It was time to find a bus back home. I walked to the same stop across the street. I waited for bus 42 once again. The university garden was full of autumn leaves. I sat on a bench and waited for 5 minutes. A red bus appeared at the end of the road. I hoped to see Mark in the driver's seat. But it was a different driver with a hat. I entered the bus and paid with my blue card. The bus was very full of people this time. I had to stand and hold the leather strap. I looked out of the window at the university. My exam was over and I felt very free. The city felt different after a successful test. I was a happy student on a busy bus. The journey home was starting with joy. The first drops of rain hit the bus window. The sky was now dark and a bit gloomy. People on the street opened their umbrellas. I was happy to be inside the dry bus. The sound of the rain was like a song. The driver turned on the windshield wipers. They moved left and right with a rhythm. I saw the reflection of the lights on the road. The city looked like a painting in the rain. I thought about the morning and the traffic. Mark was a very special part of my day. I decided to write a positive review for him. I opened the bus company's app on my phone. I found the feedback section on the menu. I wrote about the delay and Mark's kindness. Driver Mark is excellent and very helpful, I typed. I sent the message with a 5-star rating. I felt good about sharing some gratitude. The bus stopped at the central station. Many people with wet umbrellas entered. The air became a bit humid and warm. I moved to the back to make more space. I saw the bakery from the morning trip. It looked very cozy with its yellow lights. I was getting closer to my home street. I prepared my backpack for the exit. The rain was getting much stronger now. I took out my small purple umbrella. I was ready for the walk to my apartment. The bus slowed down at my local stop. I stepped out and opened my umbrella quickly. The water was splashing on my shoes. I watched the red bus disappear in the rain. Public transport is a great thing for the city. I walked fast to avoid the deep puddles. My apartment building was just around the corner. I felt the key in my pocket and smiled. My important day was almost at an end. The red bus brought me luck and success. I was a very satisfied traveler today. I entered my warm and quiet apartment. I took off my wet shoes and my jacket. I made a cup of hot tea with lemon. I sat on the sofa and looked at the window. The rain was still falling on the glass. I thought about the red bus and its route. Every day, thousands of people take the bus. They all have different stories and goals. Some go to work, some go to see friends. I went to the university to change my life. Drivers like Mark make these stories possible. I felt a deep respect for their daily work. My phone rang with a call from my friend. "How was the exam, Lily?" she asked. I told her about the history and the bus. She laughed when I mentioned the friendly driver. We talked for an hour about our future plans. I looked at the small cactus on my table. I felt a sense of peace and accomplishment. Tomorrow, I will take the bus again. Maybe I will see Mark and say hello. Maybe I will meet a new interesting person. The city is full of surprises and new faces. I checked the weather for tomorrow morning. The sun will be back in the bright sky. I put my textbook back on the shelf. I didn't need it for a few days now. I opened a book of poetry to relax. The tea was warm and very delicious. I felt like the luckiest student in the world. My denim dress was dry and clean again. I prepared my bag for a simple library trip. Taking the bus is a simple part of life. But simple things can be very beautiful. I turned off the light and watched the stars. The rain stopped and the night was silent. I dreamed about red buses and green parks. My story was simple, but it was my own. Good night to the city and to all travelers. See you on the bus 42 tomorrow.
Tell me why you want to learn English. The 3 most interesting comments will get 10 English lessons absolutely free.